Well, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I am a person in long-term recovery, and my name is Chris Thrasher. I reside in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am absolutely very honored and pleased to be here with all of you over this next hour to share just a little bit about my story, sort of what happened and why I think some of the things happened the way they did for me and where I see myself now and a bit of my recovery journey. Um, I can't thank Tommy enough for asking me to do this and all the folks at Recovery 2.0. I think what, R2O is doing is truly amazing. This whole idea of finding a new gear in your recovery is so important, especially for those of us in long-term recovery, that we keep on growing, we keep on changing. I think that's just super, super important. And the truth is that, I will share snapshots of my journey because there was a time when I could show up to a meeting like this and I could share, the whole sort of past and what using was like and kind of then what happened and what it's like now. And it could be in a nice little package in about 35, 40 minutes. The truth is, after being here for as long as I have, I don't remember a lot of, what's happened to me over the years because so much has happened. But I do remember a lot of the highlights. And so I'm going to share, with you about some of the things that I've been able to do as a result of being in long-term recovery. It really is a story, the title of my story is From the Crack House to the White House. And you'll hear a little bit about kind of what that means. But just to begin and to sort of qualify, as some of us say in some of the recovery programs that we're a part of, the truth is that I lied so much when I was out in active addiction that I honestly don't know what is the truth and what's a lie. So I tend not to talk about the way that it was because I'm not sure if I'm telling you the truth. It was a time for me that was very dark. I often say I really only had one blackout while using, and that was the 1980s. I didn't have a lot to be proud of. I didn't have a lot to talk about because my whole life was all wrapped up and consumed in the getting and using and finding ways and means to get more, regardless of who it hurt. And so, I took using drugs very seriously. It was a job for me, and unfortunately, as I think many of us on here know, that at a certain time, that job becomes just a chore, a daily chore. How am I going to get the next sort of fix, pill, hit, drink, drug, whatever that is? And, for me, it all came crashing down one day. And you have to understand, I prided myself in using drugs. I knew, which policemen drove which number cars, what their shifts were. And I prided myself at always trying to stay one step ahead of the authority, the law. And on one particular day, this police officer pulled me over, and through a series of events, that happened all within about 3 or 4 minutes. He was in the front seat of my car. I had just copped. And long story short, as I was arrested and charged with 4 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. And I was already facing a bunch of, I was on probation. I had a couple of ACDs, they used to call them back in the day, adjournment of contemplation of dismissal, which meant that, if you kept your nose clean for a period of time, whatever you were charged with would drop off. But if you kind of screwed up over that same period of time, you'd get charged with whatever you screwed up with, plus that other thing. So I had a couple of ACDs on me, and long story short, charged with 4 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. I knew I was going away, and going away for a good long time. And going through the court system. This is before they had things like drug court. No one talked about rehab or AA or NA or any A for that matter. It just wasn't talked about. It wasn't really an option. It wasn't popular. And I went to court, and the judge was like berating me, berating my mother, who was in the back of the courtroom, talking about, are you proud of the job you did raising your son? Look at him, and I'm in handcuffs, and I'm looking at him, and and I turned around and I looked at my mother, and to be honest, I didn't feel a thing. I just didn't feel anything. My mother was crying, and the judge was yelling at her and yelling at me, and my lawyer was saying, please, Your Honor, stop. And long story short is I ended up getting sent to a treatment center. My dad actually came in and worked out a deal with the court, not to drop anything, just to adjourn it for 90 days to allow me to go to a treatment center. Now, this treatment center that I went to was in Marion, Montana, which is 50 miles south of the Canadian border. So I found myself in Marion, Montana for a 60-day treatment center. I brought drugs with me to that treatment center. I had no intention of quitting. I got there, and I didn't have a problem. It was all of your problem. And through the course of the 60 days that I spent there, I started to question, could it be the drugs? Might this be a problem? Might I have a problem? And the answer was very clear, because they knew me, but they didn't really know me, right? So they didn't know who I was. They didn't know Chris Thrasher from Buffalo, New York, which is where I was from back then. But they knew the type of person I was. So they were sharing things that I felt, but I had never shared with them. And I thought to myself, how do they know this about me? Well, over the course of that treatment, I did make the decision, well, maybe I'll give this a try. And so when I got out of treatment, I decided, all right, I'll go to a meeting and see, if that sort of way of knowing me continues. And so I did. I went to a meeting, and sure enough, boy, were they talking about feelings that I had. And so I kept going. I kept coming back. And I'll never forget picking up my first 30-day coin. It was perhaps one of the first things that I had actually earned, and I really believed that I earned it. Now, when I came into recovery, I was a 9th grade high school dropout. I had failed the GED exam twice when I was out, in active addiction. So they told me at one of my very first meetings, Chris, what is your wildest dream? They said, beyond your wildest dreams, anything can happen if you just keep coming back and come back. And I thought, all right, keep coming back, and I can achieve anything. So I said, okay, I'll give you my wildest dream. My wildest dream would be to get my GED. Because see, I already failed it twice. I figured if I could pass that exam, I would ask for nothing else. That was it. I really thought that would be something that I could aspire to for the rest of my life. That's how I thought back then. I believed that. I thought, well, I could just keep on studying for this, and then, I'll fail it some more, but eventually I'll get it, and I'll be a high school graduate. And so I did something that I hadn't done the first 2 times. I took classes and I paid attention. And I asked people, how do you study? See, I didn't even really know how to read that well, but I learned how to read in recovery. I learned how to read by doing, going to the book studies where you actually read a paragraph. In the beginning, when I would go to these book studies in 12-step meetings, I would literally count the number of people in the circle, and each person was responsible for reading a paragraph. And so I'd count the number of paragraphs and the number of people and figure out which paragraph was mine. And then I'd open the book up and I'd look at that paragraph. And if there was one of those words in there that I just didn't even know how to say, like dereliction or autonomy, and I had no idea. Not only did I not know how to say it, I had no idea what it meant. And so if there was something like that in the beginning, I didn't want you to know that I didn't know those words. So I'd say, oh, I'm going to pass tonight when it came to me. But eventually, what happened was I started asking questions. what is this word? How do you say this word? What does this mean? Um, and so I was able to ask questions. And you know what? People didn't make fun of me. People worked with me. People shared with me their experience. They told me what worked for them. And slowly I start to, gain confidence. And I was able to go to meetings and say, what does this word mean? Right in the middle of me sharing, like reading the paragraph, and say, I don't know what that word means. And they would stop and say, oh, well, this is what autonomy means, or what, whatever the case may be. And so it was a journey, that began back in 1989 for me, and has continued through today. The journey does continue. It's an ongoing thing. There is no, graduation. It's really a continuation. Um, but like I say in the beginning, it was one of those things where I thought, okay, I I just want to get this GED, and I'll never forget taking a test and feeling like I knew some of the answers. And I was I finished the test, and I handed it in. And then you have to wait like 6 to 12 weeks to get your results. Now, I'd already gotten those results twice. Remember the first 2 times I failed? So this time, I was about 6 months or 9 months, something like that, into my recovery journey. And I took that test. And several weeks later, that envelope arrived: New York State Department of Higher Education. Oh, I knew what was in that envelope. And I opened that envelope up, and I remember folding the letter out, and it said, "Dear Mr. Thrasher, congratulations." I didn't even read the rest of the letter. I was a high school graduate. That was huge for me. And I had a graduation party full of people in recovery that came over to my house, or my parents' house actually. But we celebrated it because it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. And so then I enrolled in a 2-year, community college, a junior college. And I excelled. I sat in the front row. I took notes. I asked people how they studied. I strengthened, my ability to read. And I paid attention, and I put effort in. My grandma used to say to me, Chris, God will move mountains for you, but you have to bring the shovel. I brought the shovel every day. I showed up. Sometimes I have to remind myself, this is a self-help program. No one does my recovery for me. I have to do it. I'm responsible for me. And I showed up, and oh my gosh, I finished that 2-year degree. And then I thought, I'm going to go on for a bachelor's degree. Why not? Why not? And I went on for a bachelor's degree. I was the student government president. That's like so opposite from where I was. When I was homeless, I was a high school dropout. Now I'm the student government president at this college, and people know me. I know the president because I'm like representing the students in these meetings. I mean, it was crazy. So I finished that, and then I thought, I'm going on for a master's degree. Why not? If I fail, then at least I tried. And I applied to both UPenn and NYU. And my dad said, Chris, listen, why don't you also apply to a state school? He said, these are two very prestigious institutions. If you don't get in, you can still go to, one of these state schools. And I said, you know what, Dad? I said, if I don't get in, I'm not going to go. I said, but I'm going to apply to these two schools because it's where I want to study if I can get in. Do you know I got into both of them? All of a sudden, for the first time, I had a choice. Do I want to go to Philadelphia and UPenn, or do I want to go to New York City and NYU? I ended up going to NYU. I ended up getting my master's degree. And then I decided to take a break and get a job. You know what I did? I moved back from New York City to upstate New York, outside of Buffalo. And I went back and taught as a professor at the college that I started at, that 2-year junior college. I was teaching now in that college where it all began for me. So talk about coming full circle. And a couple of years later, I moved down to Atlanta, Georgia. And I had an opportunity to work for a community-based organization called the 100 Black Men of America. We were a mentoring organization, did that for a couple of years. And then the grant that we were on ran out. And so everyone was losing their job at the end of the year. So I started applying for jobs, and I wasn't getting much response because I work in a very kind of niche field of human sexuality at that time. And then I applied for a job, and just through a couple of different, we call them coincidences, but I believe coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. I had an interview with the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. David Thrasher, who served under Presidents Clinton and Bush. And when I went in for that interview, my goal with let me think about, at that time I had about 13 years of recovery. My goal was to get his business card. Oh, I knew he wasn't going to hire me, but I thought, how cool is it that I'm going to talk to the Surgeon General of the United States? And if I could get his business card to show my friends, in meetings and stuff, and say, look who I talked to today, that would be really cool. They said, you have 15 minutes. The interview will be 15 minutes long, and that's it. And so I said, okay. So I walked into this interview so nervous, and I sat down with him, and he came out of the box with a question that I was not expecting. And we started talking. And 45 minutes later, we're still talking. And he ended with something that I will never forget. And this was 20 years ago. And I remember word verbatim what he said. He said, Chris, if you come to work for me, I will take your career to the next level. And I thought, did he just offer me the job? So I got in my car and I started home, and my phone rang, and it was human resources. And they said, we'd like to offer you this position. Can you start on Monday? For the next 14 years, I worked at that medical school, and I was on the faculty. I trained physicians and did a lot of work at the community level, at the national level, around policy. Had some amazing experiences. And there came a time when he retired. And so it was time for me to look for another job. I had met a lot of people over those years. And so I actually went I took a job with the TV personality, Dr. Oz, worked for him for a couple of years. And then my phone rang, and it was President Clinton's office. And they said, we have this position that we're looking to fill out, and we have this job description, and would love for you to take a look at it and just see what you think, see if you might know anyone who might want that type of a position. And they sent me this job description, and I was like, gosh, that is like right up my alley. I think this is just amazing. And so when I called them back, I said, yeah, I do know someone who I think might be interested in it. And I said, I think I might actually put my name in the hat. And they said, that's great. Well, without telling the whole story, over the last 4 years, I've worked for President Clinton in the addiction recovery space, around substance use disorder, and doing a lot of things at the national level that has been only possible because I continue to show up. I want to take some time, though, because I think it's so important that, I am a member of a 12-step program. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the steps, but it is my program. It is my recovery. So, as much as, the story's kind of cool, and the progression, and then I could tell you, I went to the White House the first time. I will tell you this before I get into the steps. Working for him was an incredible experience. I was only working for him for probably 30 or 40 days when he called me into his office, and he said, Chris, I want you to go to Africa for me. And I said, Africa? He said, yeah. He said, I can't make it. And he said, you're going to represent me over there. And I thought, I can't represent you, Dr. Thrasher. He said, yeah, he'll be fine. He said, I've already let him know that I'm sending you in my stead. So here I am on a flight all the way over to Africa. I get to Cape Town. They have a little placard with my name on it at the airport. They put me in one of these, town cars. It's like the red carpet. I mean, this is a ninth grade high school dropout in Africa. And now there's some guy at the airport with my name on the little card. I get over to the hotel. They all know me. I show up at one of these meetings where, you know, the name is in front of the person with the microphone there. And I mean, listen, this is stuff I had never experienced before. That was just the beginning. I traveled the world with and for this man over the next 14 years. I mean, I've been all over. I've been to meetings in countries where I don't speak the language, and the only word that I recognized was higher power. That's it. That's the only thing that I recognized. The whole meeting, an hour long, higher power. That's the only thing I heard that I said, oh, wow, I know that word. I can't make this stuff up. I traveled the world. I met people. I was at a meeting in India in the middle of nowhere where when I showed up, the guy who was like the guru of the group had 3 years of abstinence-based recovery. I pulled out my 19-year coin. They damn near fell over. They were like, 19 years? What? They couldn't believe it. I gave my 19-year coin to the guy who had the 3 years, and he gave me his 3-year coin. I still have that coin upstairs. You know, so many experiences that I have while I traveled the world and just, you know, been working in public health the whole time and been able to do incredible things. So the first time we got to go to the White House, he said, listen, Chris, I need to go to the White House and I want to bring you with me. And I said, Dr. Thrasher, I said, I'm not going to get in. I said, I have a past. I said, I can't. Oh, actually, I'm missing a part of the story that's important. For the first 5 years that I worked for him, he didn't know I was in recovery. I didn't share it with him. I told myself, well, the reason why I'm not sharing this with him is because I don't want him to treat me differently. I don't want him to, you know, have special exceptions for me. Here's the truth. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I didn't want people to hold it against me. Yeah. So when he asked me to go to the White House with him, I remember calling my sponsor and I said, listen, Dave, I said, I got this problem. I said, Dr. Thrasher wants to bring me to the White House. They're going to do a background check. They're going to see everything. And I'm going to be screwed. What do I do? He said, where's the faith in any of that you were saying? And I said, yeah, but I mean, it's just a reality. He said, you've worked now for Dr. Thrasher for like 5 years. Do you think he's just going to cut ties with you now? You've already proved yourself to him. And I said, okay. So I went in on that Monday and I went over to Dr. Thrasher's office and I said, can we talk for a moment? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. And I said, I have to tell you something that I haven't shared with you before. And he's like, what's that? And I said, well, I have a bit of a past. I said, I had an addiction when I was, growing up. And I said, I've been in recovery now for, I guess at that time it was probably like 18 years. And I said, but I just need you to know that I'm probably not going to be able to go to the White House with you. And he said, well, let's try. So we filled out the whole thing. We had to give Secret Service, our information. And lo and behold, I got clearance. And here I found myself going to the White House for the first time and showing up there. And it was just an amazing experience. And I've been there now, a bunch more times, but each time it's special. Each time I pinch myself and I say, wow, this is from being a 9th grade high school dropout all the way to the White House. How crazy is this? And so, with that being said, I want to just kind of run through some of the steps and some of the corresponding traditions that 12-step programs often have that go with it, because they make me who I am. I didn't know how to publicly speak when I first came into recovery. I learned it in these rooms. I learned how to publicly speak. I learned how to go to meetings with, CEOs from, major corporations. I won't mention them, but they're just huge people. And, sit at the table and actually sometimes believe that I deserve to be there. A lot of times I get that in my head. You don't believe, you're not good enough. You shouldn't be here. If they only knew, they would kick you out and close the door, But some days I get to quiet those voices down, that tell me I'm not good enough. Those same voices that got me to start using drugs to, fix an inside problem to begin with. They say if you don't go within, you go without. And I believe that today. So how I quiet these voices down are through the steps. And so our first step says that we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. Now, for me, you know, my hair was unmanageable. My life was completely fucked up. Like, I had no problem with the concept of unmanageability. I saw tons of examples of how my life was unmanageable. Now, that said, I recognize that, and so I got to the first tradition where it talks about unity, right? And unity is all about, if you don't have to do this yourself, you might be able to do it. And I thought, oh my God, in this first step, I'm left with this void, right? Like powerlessness and unmanageability and like this yuckiness. But then in the first tradition, it says, you don't have to do this alone. This is a we thing. We're going to do this together. 1 + 1 + 1 is far greater than 3 all the time. So I get to the first tradition and I'm like, all right, I can do this thing. I can do it. And I get to the second step, right? We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I thought, I'm not insane. Insane are those people like in the straitjackets, right? That like are in like a psych ward. Listen, I rationalize and justify the most outrageous sort of nonsense if you give me the chance. I was out of my mind, right? Using made me out of my mind, using day in and day out and having to figure out how you're going to cop every day. It's a crazy, crazy lifestyle. That's what they mean when they say, insanity, right? Or to be restored to sanity. And the idea of this restoration means that at one time I had it, right? And so in the second step, you learn to act as if. We act as if we have some sanity, some sense, some healthy thinking, right? And in the second tradition, it talks about autonomy and this idea that we have this ultimate authority in our life, and this ultimate authority tells us that me, I have to trust the process. I have to understand that this ultimate authority is actually in charge. So it gets to the third step where we make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Now, for me, that there's some key words in there. First you make a decision. So I can make a decision and I can change my mind after I've made that decision, right? So it's kind of like a push-pull thing, right? But I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. When I get to the third tradition, it says that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using. So desire and decision. It's like the chicken or the egg, right? What comes first? Is it the desire to make a decision? Or do I have to make a decision to have desire? And so that's how those like that step in that tradition like complement one each other. One teaches me about desire, the other one teaches me about making a decision, but I need both together to do either one. And so that was really important. It brought me to the fourth step. Now, the fourth step is this idea of taking a personal inventory and writing to get right. I often say that this is the first sort of introduction to intimacy, right? But intimacy, if you think about it, what does that really say? Into me, I see. I have to do a deep dive into me in order to see myself more clearly. So I'm able to do that through writing, right? And like sort of cleaning out the junk drawer. I often say that we all have a junk drawer at our house, and that junk drawer is filled with it's got the playing cards and the paper clips and the rubber bands and the scissors and the whiteout and all that stuff. And it's like there, and that like when you need a certain something, exactly which drawer it's in. And some days you open up that drawer about once every year or 2 years, and you look at it and what you need is in there, but you don't see it floating on top. So you take the whole drawer. If you're like me, you walk over to the bed and you dump the whole thing over, and there's a huge mess. And then you start putting everything back in order, right? You put it all back, and the playing cards go up here, and you get a little dish to hold your paper clips, and your rubber bands get all put together. And, and when you're done with it, you slide it back in. And then if you're like me, you go over a couple times later that day and just look at it. You don't need anything out of it. You just open it up and you look at it. And what do you see? This really nice junk drawer that's not so junky anymore. That's an inventory. Cleaning out our own internal junk drawer, realigning things, putting them back in their proper place. But then what happens over the course of another year or two? That junk drawer becomes junky again. So once again, it's not a graduation, it's a continuation. So from time to time, I have to clean out my junk drawer, right? My internal junk drawer. And that's what the fourth step is all about. The truth is that the God of my understanding, I don't understand that, but I don't need to, I don't need to understand that, I often say that, we are stuck in the past because the past is stuck in us. So if I'm going to move from my past, I have to get my past out, Think about your car. When you're driving in your car, look at the size of the windshield. That's to look out forward. Look at the size of the rear view mirror. It's important what's behind you. It is important, but it's only this important. It's not this important, right? What's most important is what's out in front of us. Where are we going? What are we doing to get there next? I'm not going to forget about the past. So I'm going to look up here. I'm going to see my rear view mirror and I'm going to say, okay, I see the past, but I'm not stuck in the past anymore because I got the past out of me, right? So the fourth tradition is all about this concept of autonomy. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or, that 12-step program as a whole. Well, check this out. What does autonomy mean? Autonomy is self-governance, right? Self-governance is the reason why I have this whole junk drawer, because I had no governance. I had no governor. I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, regardless of who it hurt. I did it. It was like, you get in my way, screw you. So for me, that autonomy, that self-governance keeps me in check, right? So I don't have to clean out that junk drawer so often, right? So then, that's kind of like, so in 4, I learned what I did. I get to 5, right, where we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That's all about why I do what I do. Because when I share all that junk drawer stuff with my sponsor and with a higher power and with myself, what I start to see are patterns. I start to see behavior patterns that happen to me. And through sharing it with another person, they point out these patterns to me and they make me aware of them. So now all of a sudden, I'm able to see these patterns. And as I start to practice these patterns, I'm able to say, stop. Okay, stop, Chris. You're doing something that is not right, right? And so this whole idea that that I'm cleaning out the junk drawer, I'm cleaning up my spirit, takes me to that 5th tradition that says each group has but one primary purpose: to carry the message, to the people that are still suffering from addiction. But what's that message? Well, guess what? If I've cleaned out my junk drawer, right, then the message is a pure, clear message, right? It's not bogged down in the junkiness, in the ickiness of addiction, okay? So that's 5. I get to 6, right? So if 4 is what I did and 5 is why I did it, now I'm going to find out how I do what I do. So 6 is, making a list of all these defects of character. Well, I was at a meeting in London, England once, and London, England, there was a newcomer. He had 63 days in recovery. And when we opened up the meeting to share, I'm over in London, I'm traveling for work, I'm in my suit, looking all official. And this kid says, I know what the most important word in this step is, the 6th step. And everyone said, oh, what's that? And he said, the word is these. And I looked at him and I thought, in my head, I'm like, what's this newcomer going to try to tell me? These doesn't even have a definition. Really? You looked up the word these? Listen, dictionaries and me are great friends. I looked up powerlessness and unmanageability and sanity and, decision. But these, he said, I looked up the word these, and the definition of these is the next in time and space, the next one in time and space. So when it says these defects of character, it's the ones that are staring us right in the face. These defects of character, the ones that we're struggling with right now, right in front of us. Because listen, I'm made up of a bunch of defects, right? But what I learned in 7 is that a shortcoming is acting out on a defect. Let me give you an example. I'm a thief. That's a defect of character. Stealing is the shortcoming. I'm dishonest. That's a defect of character. Lying is a shortcoming, right? We fall short. We come up short. We do things that we know are not right. There is a New York second between obsession and compulsion. See, obsession and compulsion is really what makes up the disease of addiction. Obsession is that whole like fixed idea that takes us back time and time again to using that person, that place, that fix, that pill, that drink, that drug, knowing full well that only physical, mental, and spiritual harm will come when we use that substance, that thing, that person, that place, that situation. Compulsion is once having started that behavior, you can't stop it on your own because you've let the beast out of the box. So there's this New York second between obsession and compulsion. For me, it's just enough time to say, God, please help. Because once obsession and compulsion kick in for me, watch out. It is on. So that is 6 and 7. Or I guess just 6 and 6 really, because in the 7th step, when it says that, we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings, what that really means is we ask to not act out on our defects, right? And in the 7th tradition, now the 7th tradition is really interesting. I think it's perhaps maybe one of the most misunderstood traditions there are in 12-step programs, because it says we are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. And everyone thinks that's about the basket that, you pass around and people can put $1 in if you so choose. For me, it is all about applying what I've learned up to now. So I have to take responsibility for myself. We are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. How does that relate to 7? Well, if 7 is acting out on a defect, knowing full well, right, that it's going to cause physical, mental, spiritual pain, then I'm the one that has to be responsible for me not to act out on that defect. Does that make sense? So it's like, I have this defect. It's called, being a thief, right? The shortcoming is stealing. The taking full responsibility for yourself is, God, please help. Don't let me steal this. I don't need to steal it. I can pay for it. But once compulsion kicks in and they're like, you should just get it for free. You deserve it. It's crazy. It's crazy how that works. So anyway, I'm not going to have time because I want to have time for questions. It's already 3:45. I'm not going to make it through the rest. Let me just say that I just want to kind of buzz through some that are as I see it, really important. 8 and 9 are all about, making a list and then making amends to those people. I will just tell you this. The first time I did 8 and 9, it was easy. You know why? Because every amends that I made was, well, I was messed up on drugs when I did this. And so, please forgive me. I'm really sorry. I was wrong, but man, I'll tell you something, making amends when you're stone cold sober. Yeah, I did this with 13 years of recovery. Yeah, I did this with 23 years of recovery. I just it's a whole different type of amends. So that's 9. 10, there's something in 10 that I want to talk about, and that is the difference between sorry versus wrong. When we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. I will tell you about this. It's easy for me to say sorry. Easy peasy. I'm sorry. No problem. Sorry. I was wrong when I did this to you. I was wrong when I said that to you. Totally different. It makes me take responsibility for it in a much more personal, much more meaningful way. So the next time you have to make amends to someone, try saying I was wrong. See how that feels. It certainly changed the way amends feel for me. In 11, it's this whole idea of prayer and meditation, right? And we all know that prayer is kind of asking and meditation is sort of listening, right? But have you ever heard of that saying, knowledge equals power? We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, God as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Knowledge does not equal power. The knowledge of his will for us, and see, knowledge in and of itself isn't enough. I can know this, but I have to act on that knowledge and the power to carry that out. So that old saying of knowledge equals power made me really rethink that. Knowledge does not equal power, not if I don't act on it. I can have all the knowledge up here in my head. If I'm not acting on that knowledge, if I'm not changing my behavior, it's falling on deaf ears. It's not doing anything for me or you. And so then I get to 12, right? And 12, well, let me say something about 11, because, prayer is one of those things that I think really people struggle with, right? A lot of us go back to the faith tradition that we might have been raised on. Some of us don't, some of us depart, some of us, oh, I'm spiritual, I'm not religious. Religion is defined as a set of beliefs. There it is. It's a set of beliefs. I am religious. I have a set of beliefs that I live by. And what I would tell you is, I have this set of beliefs, and I know that religion is a trigger word, so I don't use it. That's simple. I think we get more bees with honey, or what does that say? Flies with honey than vinegar, or whatever that saying is. But the truth is that, I just have to pray. That's all I do, but prayer is like sex, right? It doesn't matter the position as long as there's contact. I mean, for real, right? So I don't care the position. I pray when I'm driving down the street, when I'm walking down the road, when I'm out jogging, whatever it is, that's what I do. So it gets me to 12, right? Where we try to carry this message and practice. Here we go. These, the next one in time or space, these principles in all our affairs. Now, how does 12, that tie into anonymity, right? Because anonymity in the 12th tradition says anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Anonymity has nothing to do with my last name. Did you hear when I introduced myself? My name's Chris Thrasher. I'm a person in long-term recovery. Guess what? I was never anonymous when I was out using drugs. I was in the police blotter on almost a weekly basis. Chris Thrasher of this, and he gave my address, is charged with this, this, and that. Now, all of a sudden, I get into recovery, right? And I'm starting to live right. And I go, shh, don't tell anyone. Anonymity is changing. Listen, anonymity is going to kill us. Why? Because if people out there in society don't know that we're in recovery, like my boss didn't know for 18 years into my recovery, but before I told him, and the only reason why I told him is because I had this opportunity to go to the White House. If I don't talk about my recovery, listen, I know some of us have relapses along the way and whatever. That's part of life. Think about any other chronic illness. Do you think a diabetic gets their insulin right every day, all day, every year, all year? Do you think someone who has heart disease doesn't have something with a little too much sodium in it every now and again? But stigma is a powerful thing, man. And so we need to be proud. My name's Chris Thrasher. I'm a person in long-term recovery. It's not my last name. Here's what is important. I don't need to go to meetings and talk about who I work for and where, and that I've gone to the White House or this or that, because now see, people are going to start comparing. I need to talk about maybe the feelings that I had, right? I need to talk about how wild it was, this idea that I was able to go as someone who recognizes that I was a ninth grade high school dropout. But the truth is that anonymity means it doesn't matter how much money you make, what job you have, who you might work for, what kind of car you drive or don't drive, what kind of house you live in or don't live in, you know, what, as long, all that stuff is outside the door. What's important when you walk into the meeting is, how am I going to share my hope, my strength, and my experience, listen to you share yours, and stay in recovery another day? If I can practice that, then principles will happen before personalities, because that's the principle, right? Think about it like this. If you want what we have to offer and are willing to make the effort to get it, these are the steps. These are the principles that made our recovery possible. The principles are the steps. In other words, these are the steps. It says these are the principles that made our recovery possible. But then they list the 12 steps. So the steps are the principles. And if you think about it, a principle is something to live by. So I look to the steps to live by. And I'm not saying that I do it perfectly right every day. No, there are some days that you would not know I'm in a 12-step program. You'd be like, whoa, that guy's messed up. But there are other days that you're thinking, wow, I'm sort of attracted to what he has. Let me ask, what does he do why is he so happy? What's the deal with that? Truth is, my higher power brought me to recovery, and recovery brought me to my higher power. I think those slogans that we have are almost like spiritual interventions in the time of need. When we say, keep coming back, just, easy does it, these types of things, those are spiritual interventions. Sometimes that's all we need to hear to just trigger us and say, oh yeah. So anyway, that's kind of me running through way too quick, the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, but that's what gave me my recovery. So anyway, with that, I'm going to sign off and say, thank you all for being here. Thank you for letting me share some of my hope, my strength, and my experience in that order today with all of you. Much appreciated. Blessings. Thanks.